Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Stewart Wiggins, Domenico Ciarallo, and Philip Tate. And I want to ask the question, how do you deal with a bully? Philip, can you kick us off?
Sure, Robyn. I can think of two instances in my agency life where I guess I had a client exhibit some bullying behavior. Early in my career, we had a client that was bullying a female colleague. And so the agency owner put me on the account to kind of diffuse the situation. And this guy's behavior was borderline sexual harassment with my female teammates. So I think my presence took that piece of it off the table. So from that perspective, I think his bullying behavior changed a little bit over the short term. We eventually resigned that account because they basically were abusing the retainer relationship and they remained disrespectful to other members of our creative team and so forth. So we had to deal with it that way. A couple of years ago, I had a client who was probably bullying one of my female colleagues. It was tricky. It was during a presentation to a larger group, and had a good relationship with this guy. But as soon as the meeting was over, I asked him if I could talk to him briefly while my colleagues went back to the office. I just explained to him honestly, your behavior is inappropriate. It was disrespectful. I think I saw other people squirming in their chairs. They're their attendees, and my teammate, female teammate in particular. This guy was just completely unaware that his comments were misogynistic or bullying in nature. He seemed to be kind of blind to that. So my interaction was helpful to him. He apologized to my colleague. My only regret on that was that I didn't stop the meeting and really express my displeasure in the moment. I think the fact that, at the time it happened, I think we were all a little surprised or shocked. And so I think I failed to show, with the benefit of hindsight, the leadership I should have in the moment, but was able to kind of deal with it after the fact, if you will. But it's a tough thing, and certainly something that we've all had to deal with probably growing up, maybe during school or something else. But in a business setting, it certainly is a little trickier.
Philip, I actually had a similar thing happen to one of our secretaries, and the thought didn't even come up until you started to tell your story. But we had some contracting clients, and one particular one was quite aggressive in nature. And when his order didn't arrive on time, or he came to pick up his order and it wasn't ready, he gave my secretary a tongue lashing to the point where she was crying.
Oh. Back
to the office, and I hear that she's crying. I pick up the phone, I call the client, I said, listen, you know what? I'm going to call this story of firing a client. We can't deal with you anymore. This is not acceptable. The money is not worth it, to the point where you can actually come into our office, belittle and yell at a secretary for something that she has no control over. Money's not that important. We don't want to deal with you anymore.
So I will say that I'm going to frame it this way, and it's cliche, but it's true. The louder they are, the harder they fall. In every case that I've experienced a bully, if you go right back to them and challenge them, they will just go crawling away. I worked for a guy a few years ago, and he was a bully. Everything had to go his way. And finally he had said something, and I said, look, I take exception to that. And I'll tell you what, he backed down and curled back in his corner and realized that he may outrank me on the food chain, but we're still equals. So really what I think it is bullies lack confidence. And the way to overcome that, or hide the fact that they lack confidence, is they just want to push around. And a lot of people will just accept that. Oh, okay, well, I'll just go back over here in my corner. My advice to anyone being bullied, stand up to them, let them know how you feel, and more often than not, they will back away.
And I think maybe that's viable man to man, but I can tell you as a woman that if I stand up to a man, especially in public, and I embarrass him and call him out, I can guarantee he's going to come at me double barrels blazing.
That's a good point. I think Stewart makes a good point, though. I think, as we talk about a lot as it relates to communications, which is kind of my specialty, honesty is what you're striving for. I mean, you're authentic when you're honest. And so, like, calling out that behavior with no apologies, setting boundaries and saying, that's not right. That's not how we do business here. That is a good way to deal with it, Stewart. But I agree with you, Robyn. I think it's different for men and women.
I know many circumstances where I'm in a restaurant or a fast food chain, and you've got different layers in a fast food chain or a restaurant. There's the cooks that are behind schedule, and then who takes care of all the grief? It's the front line. at the cashier. So there have been many examples online, and it's happened to me, it's happened to people around me, where you're in a restaurant or a fast food chain and the person is irate, yelling and screaming that their order got wrong or their order is late, and you've got this poor little customer service or waitress or frontline worker dealing with grief like that. I've seen many cases, and I've said it too, where I've said to the person, relax, you're way overboard on this circumstance. She's just doing her job. It's not her fault. There's no reason to yell at it. And I'm sure all of you guys can probably say the same thing.
My technique in dealing with a bully is the louder they get, the calmer I get, because then it becomes really obvious that what a fool they are making of themselves.
Your example of that reminds me of when I coached minor hockey. I was very lucky to play high-level hockey in Europe, and it was thanks to lots of coaches. So I gave back to my community for about 10 years. In the end, I stopped coaching because the parents in the crowd were yelling and throwing beverages on referees. I used to see some parents literally running up and down the ice as their kids skated up towards the ice. And I mean, some of the things I saw and I experienced as a coach from parents, unforgiving, but referees, oh my God, it was horrible that people would do things like this. And I said the same thing, Stewart, to them. We should turn the cameras on you to show you how silly you look and the way you're treating people and running up and down the ice. It got to the point where I stopped coaching. It was too much.
That's exactly why I got out, because of the behavior of parents and coaches. And they don't know nearly as much as they think they do. And you just don't have to take that abuse, particularly in today's day and age, because everybody's carrying a gun.
At least in America, that's the case. I can definitely say when it comes to bullying, the first step is to recognize it. You have to recognize it as bullying. And to your point, Philip, in the moment, it can be so shocking that you don't even know how to respond, because it's like, I can't believe you just said that. And being able to kind of step out of that shock and respond, I think, is a huge part of being able to deal with a bully.
As a woman, how have you handled being bullied in the past, if you've been bullied?
Oh yeah, I've definitely been bullied. And as I've gotten older, the way I've handled it has been different. As a young woman, I definitely was prone to laugh it off or prone to feel like it was my fault. I was even told it was my own fault. And so there's a lot of things in that space that are really challenging for me to look back on. As I get older, I'm much more willing to stand into my power and say, no, that's not okay. And I've done that. I've been in a place where it was a medical facility. You had to go in and sign in. And someone came in and she didn't sign in. And then someone came in behind her and signed in. And the woman who didn't sign in was very angry. I mean, to the point of being abusive to the poor girl who had signed in, like it was her fault. And I stepped in and was like, no, you can't behave that way. And she turned on me. And I literally had people come up to me afterwards and were like, are you okay? Because she was absolutely nasty to me. But I was able to kind of basically say, you're making a fool of yourself. Whereas the young woman she was abusing previously was just almost in tears. So sometimes I'll just take it and be like, you're an idiot. And other times I have to stand up and say, but it's dangerous. As a woman, it's dangerous, especially if I'm standing up to a man.
If you take it as a man or a woman, doesn't that reinforce their behavior?
So it depends upon if you take it and allow them to get what they want. Yes. If you take it as in give them brick wall, no.
I guess I'm just old and cranky because I don't take it.
Well, I think in lots of cases, when you see situations like this, you have to stand up sometimes for people because you know that they don't have the tools to deal with somebody. And I find that sometimes a woman or somebody else, a third party standing up, it diffuses the situation so quickly because the person who's the abuser, the bullier, realizes, oh, you know what? There's people around me that are going to help this person. And I think that's the biggest thing, is standing up for somebody when you realize they can't stand up for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing, Robyn, I would say is that it's tricky. Sometimes you get a bully and it's very much in your face. What's tough is when you have someone who's passive aggressive. And oftentimes those people, they just maybe they feel misunderstood. And so as in all these situations, sometimes it helps if you can put yourself in the position of the person that you're dealing with and understand maybe where they're coming from. Sometimes that can help diffuse the situation or maybe help you cope with their inappropriate behavior.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys having this conversation with me. I know that as a woman, it's a really different position to deal with bullies. And I was really interested in hearing what you had to say. And I don't feel bullied about it. So thanks so much. And I look forward to having another conversation with you really soon.